Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It is October 27th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And really, we spent most of the day in a range. We ended up selling off and closing on the very lows, which is kind of what I expected early this morning. We had that. Let's just look at the daily chart real quick. Okay, here's a look at this daily chart, and you can see we had that exhaustion bar yesterday, and we continued on what looked like it might be a range, and we did really spend most of the day inside that range, but by the end of the day we traded down, which was no surprise to me really. That's if you read my daily mid-morning chart that I post each day, I've kind of talked about that I felt like we might sell off. um, Whether or not we'll find support off of this previous resistance or we'll continue lower, we'll just have to see. I guess as we get a little correction. And the thing is, though, on this main trend that's been going on for quite some time, we finally got a close outside that trend line, and we have a new high in place. So we have to see where we're going to go. This is about what I expected for the next couple of days, was to correct some here. Um, but let's go back to the 2000 tick chart and go over the trades here. Again, you can see the big picture here, mostly sideways until we sold off late in the afternoon. And we closed pretty much on the low here. So real quickly before we get into our trades, I've still been tweaking a few things on the website. Still had a couple of little minor issues and little bugs here and there with some of the links and stuff, but I think I've got all that worked out. If you use our website, if you find anything that doesn't look right or not working properly, just drop me an email and I'll take a look at it. But I think I've got most of the kinks worked out of it now, so I hope I do. I know that if you notice, there are a few little bugs off and on today. We were still doing some stuff that created a glitch, 30-second glitch here or there, and it could have affected you. If it did, I'm sorry, but this was just stuff we had to get done. So anyway, uh, let's move on with the trades here. Okay, I zoomed in a little bit here, and 7 o'clock came right in here, right as we made this higher low here. And you can see we were just in this trading range, and we kind of dropped down. We had a trend working down, had a break, and a couple legs to a new low, and then we bounced. You might consider going long right here if you've got room back to the EMA. I think you're always better to wait on, see if you get a better setup on a higher low. Well, the thing is, that's way too early anyway, so that's why I didn't mark it. But so I'm not going to mark it. But if this would have been from about 7 o'clock, even if it's 6:30 or so, you can trade. I think this is still a little early, but you can see even in the overnight hours, the price action follows through. And so the better thing is to wait on the higher low, which comes right at 7 o'clock, about the time I assume, or the time I like to start and assume that most people are probably going to start, and that's why I start marking trades at 7, is because it's fairly safe to trade then. But you get this higher low, it's just a little close to the EMA. What you might do is let it trigger the trade first, and then drop a limit order far enough where you can get out, because you can see it found that resistance. It continued on, so it wouldn't have been an issue, but sometimes it does turn back down off that EMA resistance. So just make sure you got room to get out there, and that's why I marked that green. Otherwise, if we'd had plenty of room back to the EMA, I'd have marked that red, or I'm sorry, blue. But we get another leg up, you get a break, you just get a first entry, and you get another first entry here. You could have looked at this like a failed second entry short here, but we're not back to the EMA, so, and it didn't turn up off the trend line. Actually, the failure was right here, so no, that doesn't even, I'm getting ahead of myself. That doesn't even count. Actually, this may have broke lower before it turned down. I'm not sure, so that might still be the failed second entry when it broke higher there. Either way, you could have taken that if you really wanted to be aggressive. I'm not going to mark it. I think it's a little bit too dangerous. But you get two legs up and then we turn down. It's again, you're probably better off to wait on the lower high And we just don't get one here. We don't get a good enough signal bar, even if you wanted to be aggressive here. I don't think you want to go short there. You could look at it as a triple test, but that signal bar is just not good enough. And of course, we drop down and you get your lower high way down here. No way you want to go short right there. And you can see you get your break and move to a new low, and then we reverse out of there. And then once again, we just don't get any setups here. This thing's just kind of rocketing on back up. So you don't even get a first entry long until way up here, and now you better wait on a second entry. And you actually get a second entry long right here. Now this signal bar doesn't qualify, so some of you are probably saying, well, why is that? Why are you marking it blue then? Well, notice we got a new low here, and we're working up, and you get a first entry, second entry. So that qualifies as a failure, which eliminates the need for this signal bar to be bearish. Probably the more bearish it is, probably the better of a trap it might create. So based on that, if you wanted to look at it that way, you can enter that. Otherwise, there's no trade here. Only on a failed second entry short. Plus, you can add on that it's a second entry long as well. It doesn't qualify as a second entry long by itself because that signal bar is too bearish. So hopefully that's clear. And then you make a lower high here, which again, it looks a little congested because you got that signal bar in there that's it's got the tiny body, but you can look at that as a higher low, maybe take that because you're expecting prices to probably test these highs, at least make a new high here. So depending on how much room you got, it was a fairly quick and easy trade, but you don't know that ahead of time, so you're taking a little bit of a chance going long right there. But of course, we find resistance right where the overnight high was. Zoom back out here, or zoom back in, and you get a lower high here, and basically a double top and a big bearish bar. Again, you might be a little worried about that room, but this pretty much makes it look like a range. It gives you a fair amount of confidence that this is a range. And if it's proven, which it is, you could look at that as a triple test, but that's a lot of space in there. I'd really want to see something closer to that to count that as a triple test. But it's a double top with a big, huge bear. Just the fact that that bar is so bearish, and it broke higher here first and then turned down off that bullish bar. You actually could have entered one tick below that if you wanted to trade it as engulfing. Unless you're a really skilled chart trader, I don't recommend entering on engulfing bars. You really need to know what you're doing, and you need a lot of experience. And even then, you'll get burned sometimes. But I really think you could let this break lower and drop a limit order and see if you can get a little better entry, and maybe you could. And honestly, I wouldn't have a problem trading that with a sell stop right below, one tick below that bar. You can see it drops on down really quickly. And then you get a first entry, second entry, but this just does not look like a first entry. That still looks like all part of the same move down to me. So I'm going to wait on the true second entry. Notice the new low, first entry, second entry, and you get a big bearish bar. And that drops on down. And then you could look at this as a failed second entry long. Technically, that's not a new swing. Actually, it is a new swing high. So first entry, second entry, and when it breaks lower there, it's a failure. It's a big bearish bar. The problem is we've already had a break of this channel working down. Notice the close outside, and then it looks like two legs to a new low. So this could be over. So you got to be real careful. However, it's a range day, and we just came off the highs, so you would expect prices to attempt to test those lows. And so based on that, I like taking that. It's a little aggressive, but if you want to be aggressive, that's one to take. And of course, we bounce here, and then we're just kind of chopping along. But notice you finally get a triple test. You made the low, you test it once, you test it twice. And nice signal bar as well. And you've already had the break and a couple of legs down, so they're probably going to trap some shorts right there. There is a failed second entry long, but I don't like taking that. I don't think there's enough evidence that we're still going lower yet. So I think you got to be real careful on that one. Uh, but when it makes this triple test, it gives you that looks like rejection right there. So if it breaks higher, we're probably going higher. There is a higher low too, but by that point, it's looks too congested. It's still below the EMA. I don't think you can enter there. Turns down. Not a good enough signal bar. It's too bearish. I mean, too bullish. Look, I mean, this bar closed almost on its high. It's just way too bullish to be taking a short. Drops on down. Fails out the upper side. You do get a higher low here, but that bar is just way too big. But you could still look at this as a second entry. Notice you're coming down first entry long, that pulls back second entry. But it's a higher low either way. Closes above the EMA. I like going long there. Just looking for prices to come back to the high. And then we get up here and we find resistance once again. No setup up here, just too congested, no signal bars. You finally get a lower high here, so I like taking that one. Just looking for it to come back down to the lows again. And it eventually does, but it kind of chops around in the meantime. I don't see any other entries here until, of course, it touches this bottom, and look at the rejection again. And so every time we've kind of got that final touch there, we've had some huge buying come in here. So I like going long there. Again, there's a higher low here, but the signal bar is not any good. That's unfortunately, this is your signal bar. And even if you wanted to use that as a signal bar, I mean, it's 15 ticks. So it's a really big bar. Of course, we do run up and we fell out the top side. Unfortunately, you don't get a setup there. You do get that lower high here again. Nice signal bar. This thing's been holding most of the day, so I think you're pretty safe to take that lower high, because we've been working up and down from the highs and lows. And this one doesn't end up making another low or testing the lows again, but it's fairly simple scalp. There's no problem getting your scalp, and then it bounces. I do not see any longs here, unfortunately. There's a little breakout pullback here, and you might look at that as a failure. This is a new swing low, so first entry, second entry. So you might look at that as a failed second entry on a failure, and I just think it's a little aggressive to do it. Usually I want to see it test this a couple of times. But notice we do run on up, and you kind of come back and make this low, then you test it once, twice, you get a pretty good bar. Just make sure you got room to get out. I think it's real close. I marked it green for that reason. You do get a breakout pullback here, but it doesn't break higher there. And so if it had, you might have considered this until it didn't break higher. You just got to have enough room, and there's not much room there. I just don't see any reason to enter right there. And of course, it does turn down, and there is a trend working up here. This trend really starts right in here, like so. And you get your break and a couple of legs up. And this does turn down right at the previous highs. If you wanted to be aggressive, you might take that trade. I think you want the lower high, which comes here, which normally that wouldn't qualify, but notice you get a first entry and a second entry. So you got a failure right off that trend line. If it probably traps some longs there, looking for prices to bounce here. So I like going short there. Runs, and you don't know that you're just looking for prices to get back in the range and maybe test these lows, maybe even fell out the low side. But this thing turns out to be a really nice move. There's another little break higher right here. It's right off the key entry point. It's a big bearish bar, but by that time it's really close. You can see we're almost to these lows. It doesn't end up mattering, but you don't know that ahead of time. So if you don't have enough room to get out there based on your entry, I don't recommend entering there. Of course, you drop on down. There's another little pullback, but no setup really. And then finally we bounce, and you get a first entry and you get a second entry. You might consider that second entry. It's right at 230. It's a nice bearish bar. It is a second entry. The one problem is you got a little bit of a trend coming up here, and that's really the first break. It does try to go higher and fail right here. on a lower high, and that's right at 230. But it still could push up one more time. So I didn't mark either one of those, but either one of those you could argue from maybe to be green. You finally get your failed second entry long there, which would have been the better place to enter, but it's well after 230, so no trade there. And that's the way I saw it today. So when it gets like this, you got to be real careful, because really you prefer to get in off these lows or off these highs. You want to go long off these lows or short off these highs, and you don't get a lot of setups like that. It is wide enough that you might consider these lower highs and higher lows, but you got to be careful with those as well in a range if it's too tight. But this range was large enough that you could probably consider those with no issue. So just be careful with them. When you get in these tight ranges, sometimes it's best just to kind of sit and wait. But this one, actually this range, I say tight range. I mean, it is fairly tight, but I mean, almost 7 points is 6.5 points. So there's enough room in there to take a higher low if you get a good setup. So nothing wrong with that. But anyway, that's how I see it today. So I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up and try to get out of here at a decent hour today. Thanks for bearing with me with the website. Hopefully we got all the kinks worked out and everything's good to go. Again, if you find something that's not acting right, or something that's a link that's link or URL that's incorrect, feel free to drop me a note and make me aware of it, and I'll try to fix it. But I hope I have them all now. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next.